A little bit of a mindset thing that I want to mention to you that I hope you can mention to your kids. It's very important as a hitter to understand that your intention of going in there is to hit. For sure, at the younger levels, Mosquito, maybe even leading into Peewee, sometimes there's not a lot of strikes thrown. Sometimes it's a bit of a walk-a-thon when we're in a ball game and the score ends up being 18-16 with 40 errors and a million walks. But we still got to encourage our kids to go in there with a mindset to hit. A big part of that has to do with understanding that hitting is about seeing a pitch that you can hit and swinging. It's not about balls, it's not about strikes. For sure, at some higher levels, there's a bit more of a mindset of we swing at strikes and we don't swing at balls. But at these younger age categories, it can't be so much a mindset of balls versus strikes. Actually, I would rather you think to tell your kids don't think at all about balls and strikes. Simply get in the box and think about something that you can hit. If it's a pitch that you can hit, take a hack at it. Let the umpire worry about balls and strikes. When there are two strikes, maybe that changes a little bit. Maybe now you got to think a little bit more about balls and strikes. Maybe the swing changes a little bit in that maybe we're not as narrow to as big, and maybe we're not letting our hands end up as deep. So with two strikes, maybe we shorten up and start a little bit wider, and that forward move is a little less aggressive, and maybe the loading of our hands and our body isn't quite as much because we need to be a little bit quicker, both in terms of our move and in terms of our decision as to whether or not we're going to swing. So maybe the two-strike approach is a bit of a cut-down, shortened-up swing, but it's not a 50% swing. We're not getting into the box with two strikes and thinking about just let me hit a ground ball. It's still a aggressive, firm swing, but maybe it's a little bit smaller than it otherwise was. And in terms of choosing which pitch to swing or not swing at, it can't be a matter of maybe I'll swing. This is a very, very big part to every successful hitter. It's a mindset of I am swinging. It's not a question of will I swing or will I won't swing. The idea is I am swinging. And the way you can describe it to your kids is maybe with a yes, 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 no approach or a green, 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 red approach. And the idea behind that being simply on each and every pitch that comes out of that pitcher's hands, your players should already have the mindset of I am going to swing at this pitch. And then the ball comes out of the pitcher's hand. We read it as not being hittable, and then we shut it down. Green, 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 red, or yes, 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 no. If we have kids going in the box thinking maybe I'll swing, maybe I won't swing, they're going to have to waste some of that time as the ball travels for them to decide whether it's good enough or not, and then decide, do I want to swing or not? We can help them find a lot of success if they're in the box thinking, I am swinging, I'm swinging, I'm swinging, I'm swinging, I'm swinging, yes, swing, and then they just carry on into their swing. Or I'm swinging, I'm swinging, I'm swinging, I'm swinging, I don't like what I see, and I shut it down. That's a big part of the mindset of successful hitters. You got to be ready to go each and every pitch. Okay, a good kind of activation drill or exercise that you can do with your kids. Just something I like to call twist holds. It's a very simple thing. As I was saying before, we don't really want our kids to be too far weight back, too far weight forward, either in the setup or in the forward move. And then when they start to swing, we want them to stay pretty centered. So a simple thing we can do is just put them in the position where they feel they would be when they land on their forward move, and just get them to feel what it's like to kind of shift their weight from the back to the front. Now, for a lot of kids, this is going to be very challenging because in order to shift their weight from the back to the front, a lot of them are going to feel like they need to move back and they need to move forward. But this is more a matter of loading your hips up internally, seeing that lead knee kind of collapse inward a little bit, and putting our body in a position where that trail leg is able to carry a little bit more of the weight, and then also unloading that back leg where that rear knee kind of collapses in, and now we're in a similar position, but we're on the front. Hitting for power has a lot to do with activating the whole body, creating a lot of force from the ground up. So if they're in a good position with their butt a little bit deep, you can have them in their stance, but they don't even really have to be. They can just kind of be standing here. They don't even have to have a bat at all. All they really need to do is kind of feel what it's like to turn their body so it's kind of facing behind them, and understanding and feeling that the majority of their weight is sitting on this back leg, and then turning open and feeling that the weight is kind of sitting on this front leg. So as a twist hold, you can kind of put them in a position where they turn backwards and kind of hold that position so they feel a little bit of that stretch through their body, and they feel themselves kind of loading up on that backside, and then also opening up, turning the other way so they feel that weight kind of on that front side a little bit more. Big note for this: do not allow them to be spinning their feet, getting their heels up and off the ground. That's not part of this. If they're spinning their feet and getting their heels up off the ground, they're not going to feel how their body is kind of stretching out properly. So you want to make sure when they twist to the closed side, that lead heel kind of stays on the ground. We don't allow them to do this because that's not the right idea. They're not going to feel what they need to feel. Heel stays down on the front side while they twist closed. Heel stays down on the back side while they twist open. When they get into their swing and they open up, is that back heel going to release and do whatever it might do? For sure. But we don't want any spinning of our feet. We don't want to be squishing bugs. We simply want to have them activate their body by kind of turning closed, maybe bouncing into it a little bit, maybe holding it for a 2 or 3 or 5 count, and then kind of turning open, feeling the extreme limit where that heel might want to start to pull up off the ground, maybe bouncing into it a little bit, maybe just kind of holding it for a count of 3 or 5. And this could be a good exercise to get your kids into the mindset of activating their body to get ready to start ripping off some good swings. First drill I want to go over is one that I call rear lead, rear lead. Very simple, and it's a reference to the rear foot and the lead foot. We're not making a big forward move in this drill. We're kind of staying somewhat centered. That's where we're starting with. Let me grab a baseball. And this can be done on their own. This can be done with a partner player. This can be done with a coach. It can be done by a verbal cue from you where you let them know when to go. But the idea is we're trying to put them in a position where they're kind of already in that launch position. We've already been in our stance and we've already made our forward move, and we're simply ready to swing. So the idea is all they do is set themselves up in a spot where if they wanted, staying very centered, they can simply lift up their lead foot, lift up their rear foot, lift up their lead foot, lift up their rear foot. They do that in sequence, front to back, front to back. We're not going back. We're not going forward. We're staying centered. They're going to feel their body start to kind of snake and move and coordinate and organize itself. The hands might start kind of waving back and forth. The barrel might start kind of waving back and forth above their head. We don't really want them actively doing any of those things. We're encouraging them to stay very centered, and we're encouraging them to literally lift the lead and the rear foot up and down off the ground while staying centered. So all they're doing is they're here, front foot up, back foot up, front foot up, back foot up. They're going to start to feel their hips and their trunk and their shoulders start to turn, and on you go, or swing, or now, or on their own after 3 or 4 or 5 kind of demos or reps of that. It's just making some moves. And when the time comes, they're going to put that lead foot down and they're going to rip into a swing. Rear, lead, and when you think it's the right time, go. Okay, next drill I'd like to talk a little bit about, I call on decks. The reason I call it on decks is because on deck is the position in batting right before at bat. Just a little bit of info right there. There's 3 batting positions. There is at bat, there is on deck, which means you're next, and there's in the hole or hold. Debatable what's the right word, but it doesn't really matter because that's the position just before on deck. So when a player is in the hole, they're kind of helmet on, bat in hand, getting ready to go, watching and trying to figure things out. Once they get on deck, which is this drill, it should be a matter of establishing and figuring out your timing with that pitcher and how long it takes everything to get in here to the catcher. For sure, yeah, they want to grab 2-3 bats and swing it and look super cool and look around and see who's watching them, but we got to encourage kids on deck to be focusing up so they can start establishing their timing. It's going to be hard to get off a good swing if we don't have a sense of timing. So the idea with on decks is that you're in your stance. We got our player in their stance. And it's an imagination, it's an idea that the pitch is coming in. And what we're doing from our stance is we're getting ready, we're making our forward move, and we're landing in that good launch position, and we're holding that position. Okay, it's going to be really hard for a lot of kids to do this based on a lot of the bad habits they have. If you do this exercise with a lot of kids, you will find that they're going to be in their stance and maybe we're good, maybe we're in a good setup, maybe we're ready to go. But the second they start that forward move, a whole bunch of bad things happen. Maybe they're here and maybe they're here stepping out a little bit, or maybe they're all of a sudden kind of sneaking back and then they're stepping into the plate. This is a drill that you can do with them. They can do on their own. Doing it on their own is, potentially problematic because maybe they don't have a reference and idea as to all those good positions that they need to be in. So a good part of this exercise is that they do a couple demos, 2 or 3 or 4 of them. And in between each one, they visually check themselves. So it's not a matter of being here and just stepping and landing. Okay, I did one. Okay, I did another one. And then on the third one, okay, I did my last one, now I'm ready to hit. If they would visually look at themselves, they would realize they're in a really, really bad position. So what we want them to do in this drill is to visually have a look at themselves, make sure they're in a good spot. They're going to be here in their stance, and they're going to get ready to go, and they're going to check, okay, am I centered? Is my lead arm down? Is my rear arm away from me? Is my barrel above my head? Am I a little bit loaded? Am I too deep? Am I too here? Did the bat kind of drop down? Did my rear shoulder kind of drop down and I'm not in a good launch position? We want our players to be able to go from a stance to a launch position and check and make sure everything is good. If they are noticing that it's not good, hopefully they can adjust. If you're with them and you're seeing that it's not as good as it could be, hopefully you can help them adjust. And what we're doing is we're thinking as if we're on deck and we're seeing what our timing would be like. Yeah, I would have swung at that one. We're imagining what it's going to be like to be in the box when we get in there and I'm in a good spot. Okay, I believe that I'm doing this right. So let me go ahead and get a swing off. And on that last swing, we don't want to have that pause. We don't want to have that hold. We want to allow the player to just rip into their swing.